So today we're going to talk about reproductive behavior. Who's excited about that? How many of you forgot that was today's lecture topic and you were going to stay home? Yeah, you can look to the left and right and you can see attendance is low today. It always happens. The rest of you are going to sit like this the rest of the time. I promise. And then one of you, and Brandon, I don't know who this is, but there's going to be somebody who either now, probably won't ask me now because I'm going to go ahead and just throw it out there. But they might ask me after class. They'll say, my cousin had twins with two different fathers. How did that happen? My answer is always a very tight Google calendar. There you go. Some people are thinking about it. There's really only one way that can happen. So there you go. Anyway, we're going to talk about reproductive behavior. I'm going to assume, and please don't tell me yes or no, I'm going to assume most of you know the basics of reproductive behavior, right? So I'm going to kind of skip over, the tab A slot B business, right? I'm going to assume you know that. If you don't, call your grandparents. I would say call your parents, but that would be awkward. It's much easier to talk to your grandparents about sex. I mean, they'll forget it. They're old, right? They'll forget you had the conversation by the time it's over. Nobody gets to think about these things. Just wait till you start thinking about your parents having sex. That's why nobody shows up in this class. So we'll talk a little bit about development. We'll talk about some hormones, some brain circuits that control behavior. Briefly touch on sexual orientation, parental behavior. We'll talk about some other interesting things as we go along. I'm sure there's going to be some fascinating stories. Everybody's going to join in and share something really interesting. So, in case you don't know this, right? Reproductive behavior is actually probably the most important category of behaviors for any species, any species that reproduce sexually, right? And the reason for that is, and I know we kind of joked about this, like your parents having sex, right? But for any of you that sort of enjoy your life, and I know it's going downhill now, you should be glad that that happened, right? Because otherwise you're not here. Otherwise, we wouldn't have your wonderful smiling faces. So, thankful for that every day. I get a paycheck from Marshall, right? Because you guys picked me, right? So you guys have to continue to overbreathe to support us. So we try to develop students here. Enrollment's down. Please have more kids. It's not going to help us for 15 or 20 years, but we need students. So very important social behaviors. Again, we're not going to focus on sort of that, and you can put whatever 3 to 85 minutes, whatever you think you fall on that category there, right? However long you think that takes. We're not going to talk about those few moments of the particular activity, but we want to think about the things leading up to that, the things before and after that, and we're going to really think about, as I said, development and sort of some interesting developments, right? All right, so you guys know about gametes, right? Those are your sex cells, right? Eggs, or sometimes called ova, right? If you get fancy, and sperm. So you guys know about that. Now, there is something called sexually dimorphic behavior. I'm going to use this phrase, sexual dimorphism, quite a bit today in class. It's something we should think about. For our purposes, because we're thinking about reproductive behavior and not sexual behavior, right? Those are sort of two different things. And you can think about how those overlap considerably, but how there are differences as well. We want to think about differences in male and female behavior. We'll think about differences in males and female brains. We also want to think about when we think about morphology here, we think about shapes, right? If you think about something that's dimorphic, that means there are like two shapes, right? And so we're going to think about those sort of two different cells, right, that we might have. Which is kind of interesting. And sexual dimorphism extends far beyond just the sex act itself. How many of you love elephant seals and walruses? Nobody's a walrus fan. Pinnipeds. Nobody's really into pinnipeds. My hand's going up. Sea lions. Stretchy bear case. Nobody's a sea mammal fan, I guess. So if you want to think about sort of the impacts of sexual dimorphism, I always like to ask people, why can you only get married to one person at a time? And the correct answer is, males aren't that much bigger than women to justify a second partner. Right, Megan?
Definitely.
Definitely what you were going to say, right? So if you were to compare like average male to average female, there's like maybe like a 1 to 1.2 size difference, right? So it's kind of hard to marry like a 20% or 25% of a person. It's just the paperwork alone is complicated, right? So if you think about, now this whole story started with pinnipeds, and maybe like waiting for me to come back to elephant seals, right? So elephant seals, they sort of have a social relationship called a harem, right? So there's kind of like one like bull elephant seal and multiple females, right? What's interesting is if you were to look at different species of pinnipeds and you were to compare the size difference between males and females, you sort of chart that on one line and then chart like harem size on the other, what you can see is as that dimorphic body structure that gets bigger, so does the harem size, right? So as one member of the male member of the species is that much larger than females, then they have more females in their harem for reproductive purposes. So there you go, right? It's kind of interesting. We cite all of this. So there you go. You don't think about the importance of these things like on social structure, right? It's like now it's like, well, the law says you can only marry one person at a time, right? I don't really want to get into a discussion about polygamous. That's probably like a whole separate class. Somebody else knows something about. So we're able to skip over that. So, but what's interesting is a lot of it's body size, right? So if you look at other species like gorillas, how many of you love gorillas? You guys are afraid to raise your hands today? I think that's it. It's a good gorilla thing. No worries, it's not a trick question. Who loves gorillas? So there we go. Gorillas, the males are quite a bit larger than the females, right? So they have a number of females in their reproductive circles, compared to like chimpanzees, right? Chimpanzees, the males aren't that much bigger than the females compared to gorillas, so they have smaller reproductive. Makes sense, right?
What else people on my 600 pound?
Looking at average. So maybe I
But
should.
actually, what does like one at any partner?
Yeah, well. So today we're going to talk about reproductive. This is where I should have started this meeting. We're going to talk about the average member of, and I think Casey, only I just realized the pun included in that statement, right? So we're going to talk about the average member of a particular species, right? Okay. We're going to ignore everything else. And I think, this is great for this particular conversation, but it's also sort of great for this particular conversation as well, okay? So there are going to be things that I'm going to completely skip over. That doesn't mean I don't think those are important. It just means, A, we don't have time for it, B, we probably don't have a lot of solid research on it, and C, we're going to just talk about that average. Does that make sense? So we're not, how many of you are in the human sexuality class right now? Anybody in that class? Anybody taking that class? Yeah, you're going to get a whole bunch of interesting things in there, right? That we're not going to talk about here. But I bet I'm going to tell you some cool stories that you're not going to get in the class. So we're going to talk about orangutan sex today. You guys want to leave, you're welcome to do so. That's a thrilling story. All right. Actually, Casey, I don't know when's a good time to tell them this story. Is now a good time? The orangutan sex, or come on, wait. Let's wait. They're excited for it. Don't pay attention.
They're so excited.
All right. So here's a couple pictures of folks. Again, we're going to. So some other things we're going to skip over, right? Most folks get an X and a Y, or an X and an X, right? You get two X's, you're a female. You get an X and a Y, you're a male. That's pretty awesome. There are folks who get multiple X's, X's, and multiple Y's. We're going to skip over that as well, right? Not quite as related to what we're going to talk about today, but those things do happen. Nothing too much to worry about there. I love this. Love leaving the pronunciation guys quick. You should know how to pronounce gonads. It rhymes with monad. What you see when you see a horrible advertisement, moan is an ad, right? There are two important sort of phrases on this slide. That's organizational effects and activational effects. Now, Trevor, all jokes aside, this is really important. So we're going to talk about this probably for 3 weeks, okay? Organizational effects and activational effects of hormones. So basically what we're saying is there are different hormones, right, that sort of come online and go offline throughout your lifetime, right? I have a pretty good assumption that most of you have experienced at least one of those shifts in hormones, right? How many of you went through that awesome thing called puberty? Again, no one's going to raise their hands. We can tell there are a couple telltale signs, like one, you're in your 20s or older. Pretty sure you've hit puberty. Trevor, there's another thing you can do. You can just do this to some people's faces, right? And if it kind of hurts your hands because they have hair there, you know they've hit puberty, right? So that's a pretty good check. Of course, like half the people you're going to do that to, and they're going to slap you, and then there's like another half of the people you're going to do that to, you're not going to feel anything at all. So that's not the best check. So always just ask. So what do we mean by organizational effects of hormones, right? This is things that happen early during development, okay? So we already talked about that X and that Y chromosome business, right? So you're going to get 2 X's or you're going to get an X and a Y. Okay? If you get 2 X's, you sort of go down this default path of development, right? Not a big deal. There aren't extra hormones present. Nothing special needs to happen, right? Because the sort of standard approach, right, is the development of the female reproductive system, okay? And if you start to think about this from sort of a reproductive capacity standpoint, it really makes a lot of sense to make the standard way the female reproductive system, right? Because females tend to be the choke point in most species, particularly in mammals, on the reproductive capacity of that species, right? So if you were to think about this and you think, boy, I'm going to try to have as many kids as I possibly can, right? And if you have, I know now it's the worst idea ever, so don't try. But if you have 2 X chromosomes, which also means you have a uterus, you're pretty well limited there on the number of years between puberty and menopause, and then like getting an egg every like 28 days, and then trying to convince someone to fertilize that egg every 28 days, right? And then you're like, oh man, I did that once. Well, then you got to wait like at least 9 months before the next go round, right? Because that's how long it takes to bake a human. So you're sort of limited. Let's say, I mean, if you were really pushing it and really had people lined up for the next few years, maybe you could get out 20 kids, right? That might be a reasonable estimate of kind of like a high-end capacity. That's including, it's like single births, right? It's not if you accidentally got 2 at a time, right? So that happens, so be ready for that. Okay, it's called twins. You needed 2 kids at a time. What was that, Megan? Nothing at all? I didn't think so. So, organizational effects, right? If you don't have any sort of extra hormones, you're going to develop a female reproductive system. If you have sort of this other hormone present, right? Any guesses on what that hormone might be? Not always any guesses. Testosterone, right? There's really only like sort of 2 hormones we're going to talk about. One's testosterone, and the other one are sort of group of hormones that fall in the estrogens, right? So that's really it. If testosterone is present, and you have the receptor for testosterone, we'll talk about that in a moment, then you will do a couple things. You'll drive then the development of the male reproductive system, and you'll actually sort of cause the withering away of any parts of the female reproductive system, right? Because when you start out, you're this great big mass of cells, the cells start dividing and do all the business. You really got both sets of tubes, right? And then depending on the presence or absence of testosterone, you kind of shift tubes one way or the other, and you end up with what you got. Okay? So that's an organizational effect. This is early in development. Right? Like this is before you shoot out the birth canal. Okay? And that's awesome. So we all came out of our mothers and we had a reproductive system, right? But it was a little bit, and maybe longer than some of you wanted, before you actually started using that reproductive system, right? Okay? Sometimes it takes a while to get that started, right? So there's this time from birth to puberty where it's there, but it's not really doing anything, right? It's just kind of taking up space. So we have to turn that system on, right? And we turn that on, that's called an activation. So you have either the male reproductive system, doesn't really matter which, right? But up until puberty, it's not really doing anything, right? When puberty starts, all kinds of phenomenal things happen. You guys have been through that. Not necessarily going to happen puberty talk. Yeah, you're past it. Right? It was smooth or it wasn't, but you can do it. So, there you go. Activation effects. Turning things on. Okay? All right, everybody, does that make sense to everybody? This is important. Later, we're going to talk about something. I'm going to go ahead and throw out this awesome, cool phrase, prenatal androgenization. Okay? And what do we mean by prenatal androgenization, right? This means before birth, exposure to testosterone. Okay? This is going to have massive impacts on your physical development, especially if you've got that Y chromosome. But also it's going to have some impacts on behavior. And that's what we're going to talk about this week a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about it next week when we talk about emotion, we'll talk about aggressive behaviors, and things like that. That's going to make sense. All right. Internal sex organs. You guys know what those are. There are a couple of these you might think are external, but they're internal, even though you can see them from the outside. Just put the heads up there. You've got the Mullerian system, that's going to be the female reproductive system. The Wolffian system is the male reproductive system. Anti-Mullerian hormone has what we call a defeminizing effect, right? This is present in folks with a Y chromosome during development, and that will cause sort of the withering away of that Mullerian system. And then if you have your androgens there, we're thinking about testosterone. That's going to have a masculinizing effect, which is going to develop those male reproductive parts. Does that make sense to everybody? Awesome. Now, there are some folks with something called androgen insensitivity syndrome. Okay. We'll briefly talk about that. We won't necessarily talk about some of these other issues. But androgen insensitivity syndrome, these are individuals who have testosterone, but they don't have the receptor for testosterone. Okay? So, testosterone's there, but it's not doing anything. Right? These are people with a Y chromosome. They're not going to develop their primary and secondary sexual characteristics as you would anticipate for someone with a Y chromosome. Not a big deal. Just wanted to get you guys to think about how hormones work, right? You have to have a receptor for the hormone in order for the hormone to work, right? Hormones are part of the endocrine system. The endocrine system and the nervous system are kind of similar in those ways, right? Dopamine's awesome, but if you don't have the dopamine receptor, guess what? Nothing happens, right? Same thing with testosterone. It's going to do stuff for you. If you don't have a testosterone receptor, it's not going to do anything, okay? So there you go. Now I'm starting to think about these guys who take testosterone supplements. Like, should they have like some kind of like gene therapy to increase their testosterone receptors too? I think that makes more sense, right? And then they should have some other gene editing to make sure their prostate doesn't go crazy. That's like another thing to watch out for. Because I always say there are only like 2 or 3 things on the Y chromosome, testicles and chest hair, but there's also a faulty prostate that's on here as well. So that thing's going to kick out. Just hang in there. There's no data about this stuff. How many of you on a regular basis think about your prostate? I was only expecting like maybe 3 or 4 hands to go up because that's only the number of people who have a prostate in here, but I didn't even see that. You got to start thinking about that now. Huh? Certainly. Because when I'm 70, I still want to be able to urinate. So I know that's like a small goal, but I think it's an important. That's why I don't get on exercise bikes, because I think I'm past the point where that seat is going to do me any good. And I'm just like, get the ones with the white seat or, stop on a row machine or something, right? I think that's going to be safe. Now you guys are thinking about this, right? About switching up the cardio. So some of you come in on like, morning, don't remove this. Don't try to ride your bike, guys. That's really bad for your boss. That's a guarantee right there. I don't know. All right, external genitalia, I think you guys know where those are located. Only the scrotum, right? The testicles, those are internal guys. Even though you might think they're on the outside. They're very temperature sensitive. Sperm are, that's why they're hanging out there. So you guys know this stuff? I thought people knew that. All right, I don't think, I mean, these are just like weird pictures. You're welcome to look at them. But no. You're going to have to look at it a while now. Think about it. All right. The whole thing goes. Here's the story. It all sort of starts the same. Even your tail, right? That's my favorite part of this. You guys can see. Because they cut off the tail here, right? Well, you should always ask them to do that. What? You see, what's wrong with this computer?
Really wants to look at that, I guess.
All right. Let's try this. All right, let's try one more time. So the point of that was, again, sort of developmentally speaking, everything sort of starts the same. You got to have your hormones start moving there. There you go. There's a nice diagram, flow chart, basically talking about those hormones or no hormones, and what you know. Covered that. All right. Well, hormones, other hormones. This is like a whole month of hormones, so just be ready for that. Right? It's a great time. There are hormones called gonadotropin releasing hormone, gonadotropic hormone, and then you actually have other hormones, follicle stimulating luteinizing hormone. We typically think about these when we're thinking about menstrual cycles, right? If you haven't thought about one of those in a while, just get ready. We're going to talk about menstrual cycles for a good bit today. It's going to be fun. But these hormones are present in males as well. Whatever hormone that you find in females is going to be present in males. The concentration or the amount that's going to be different. Right? Even all the way down to prolactin, which is something you don't think, why would a male need that? Because of their reasons. Hey, who wants to talk about kisspeptin? That's fun. This is the guy that initiates puberty. It's called kisspeptin, not because kissing and puberty go together for some people, but because it was discovered in Hershey, Pennsylvania, at the at university. Yeah. University of Pennsylvania, campus there. Yeah, so they're called kisspeptin. This is actually, interestingly, under the control of leptin. And I'll talk a good bit about leptin later when we talk about control of eating, right? But leptin is a satiety signal that is released from adipose tissue, right? And this is in particular in females. If you have a female with a low body fat percentage, she'll actually hit puberty at a later time than a female with a higher body fat percentage. And again, because of this leptin control of kisspeptin. One of several reasons we're starting to see an earlier shift in the onset of puberty. Part of this is really leptin. It's kind of an interesting story, right? Here we go. So we talked about males and females. We got sort of two pathways here. We got gonadotropin releasing hormone. It's coming out of your hypothalamus, right? It's telling your pituitary gland to release your gonadotropic hormone, which is telling whichever set of gonads you have to release either testosterone or estrogen. Not a big deal, right? kind of the same process. Different things happen, right? Your ovaries obviously do slightly different things than the testes do, but it's kind of the same process, same hormones. All right, here's a nice chart. You guys love charts. Here are other hormones. We talked about prolactin, right? Kind of makes sense to think about the word. It's involved in milk production. Also has a role in the refractory period. Different than the refractory period we talked about. Same basic concept. It's not talking about sodium channels. I guess we should talk about oxytocin a little bit. How many people have oxytocin? Yeah, everybody should, right? So you guys know the story, right? Is that true, Casey? Everybody loves oxytocin. So oxytocin is kind of cool. It's really involved in pair bonding, right? Okay. So it's really involved in pair bonding, which is kind of exciting. So if you're hanging around with somebody that you like, you might have a little increase in oxytocin. Boy, I'm hanging around that person. It's really phenomenal. Interestingly, oxytocin plays some other important roles, sort of in this reproductive system as well. If you ever get something stuck in your uterus and you need to get it out, a good way to do that is increasing your oxytocin levels, right? So this is like how babies come out, right? So as a I don't know, Charlie, whatever you name your kid, it's working its way out of you and it's stretching your uterus. It's obviously not going to be a pleasant thing. I don't know if you've ever seen those videos, like people scream and yell, right? Talk about this. It's not a lot of fun. I think childbirth takes, 25 to 83 hours is about how long it lasts. And babies weigh 15, 20 pounds. Body weights are increasing. What's an average baby's weight? 6 pounds, 7 pounds. My sister had a baby. It was like 5 or 6 pounds. It was like, where's the rest of it? It's like I thought more came with it. Apparently not. That's all you get these days. It's not bad. I don't know. They can give no comment. Try to have as big of a kid as you can. Well, their head's going to be bigger and they're going to have better brain development. Is that not true? You read that? It's because I haven't written it yet. But as soon as I do, I'll read that. It's going to be a good book. So, pair bonding, this is exciting. Oxytocin, getting things out of your uterus, that's right. So your uterus starts to really get stretched and it's not so pleasant, and it tells your brain, like, hey, boy, if I had some milk down here, that'd be great. And your brain, ultimate trickster, says, hey, I'm missing you some oxytocin. So, boom, comes oxytocin. Oxytocin does something amazing to your uterus. It makes it contract. And so it's just going to squeeze even, right? It was already stretched and it's squeezing tighter. But it's going to be even worse. And it's going to cause even more pain. But what it's also going to do is it's going to eventually, get that fetus thing out of it, right? Charlie, whatever you and so it's going to continue to cause that contraction. This is one of the only times that a positive feedback loop is a good idea, right? You should write that down. Most of the time, negative feedback loops are the way you want to go. How many of you have ever been too hot or too cold? Okay, that's happened to everybody, right? So when you get too hot, the correct thing to do is just turn up the heat, right? No, that's stupid. You turn down the heat, right? If you get too cold, you turn up the heat. You go in the opposite direction, negative feedback, right? It works in this case to do a positive feedback because having, that fetus in your uterus is temporary, right? The idea is to get it out. Trust me, that's what you want to do. You don't want to leave it in there any longer than that. So you want to push it out. So as you're increasing oxytocin flow, you're increasing that contraction of your uterus, you're increasing the likelihood that you'll eject your offspring. So there you go. Also, you can think about how I'm going to say this with things. I almost said something else. So I gave a talk on Saturday, and I think Casey, I was the only one who had this on the back of their nameplate. It said, this is a family-friendly event, mind your language. Just for, it was on all of them? Oh, okay. I felt
very personally attacked.
My mentor told me it was just for me. She said, no, nobody else had that. For everyone else. So, let's say you accidentally decided you were going to have 2 kids at once, right? You have twins. What they will often do is when the first one comes out, right? You can imagine your uterus thinking about this. Oh, I got 2 balls of flesh stuck in there. What am I going to do about this? So you're squeezing one out, one comes out, and all of a sudden there's some relief, right? And you're like, I think I'm done, right? I don't care what's in there now. I can live with it. Then that first one out was bad enough, right? So there you go. Now, the problem is your oxytocin levels are going to drop because your uterus stretch is dropping, right? So what they'll often do is they'll have you start breastfeeding that first child, right? Because breastfeeding also increases the flow of oxytocin, right? And so you'll increase, because it's also involved in milk injection, right? And so you can increase, sort of boost your oxytocin levels a little bit so you can continue to get some uterine contractions and get that other child out. So there you go, there's a little trick. I don't know if you're like out in the woods and accidentally give birth and you think you have twins, sort of. Makes a lot of sense, right? I thought, thank you, you're welcome, right? Survival guy. You don't need anything. Animals?
Like the sheep, like multiple birds, you can take about the other one after the other one.
I think they're the last birds.
Like, no, like if there's like triplets, like the last bird you were maybe after the first.
Yeah, this is just taking a break. I mean, and so I talked about the uterus like it's actually got some feelings, right? But it's because the oxytocin levels are going to drop for a while. You're not going to have those powerful contractions to move that other fetus. So there you go. Always keep your oxytocin levels high if you're trying to get birth. That's the trick. Oxytocin, like I said, it's also involved in pair bonding. So there are different kinds of voles. And just to clear the air on this, a vole is a little rodent, right? Not a bird in case someone told you that. Nobody told you it was a bird or a rodent. You've got someone who goes around telling people voles are birds, and it's wrong. Right, Casey?
Yeah.
It's not you.
It's not me.
It's not you.
I knew what it was.
Yeah. So it's a little rodent thing, right? And so there are different species of this. And one species is sort of monogamous, and the other one is not, right? And so what's cool about this is if you go in and you start reaching down into these vole holes and you pull out a vole of this one species, they do live in holes as a matter of fact. You pull one out and you were to do genetic testing on the voles in that hole, what you would find is the male vole, not necessarily the father of the little, like pit bulls, right? Little baby bulls. So that's, and so for that particular vole, you just sort of like, goes around, knocks on the door of the vole hole and says, hey, what are you doing? If you're not busy, I got an idea. Let's just see how this works out. And then when all's said and done, he's like, you know what? I got to go. I got another appointment. And so they just kind of move around, right? It's mysteries. Okay? The monogamous voles, if you reach in, you pull out that whole family of voles, you do some DNA testing, you're going to find that most of the offspring belong to that particular male vole. They kind of move in, they kind of, get down on the lazy boy couch, they watch some TV, they get comfortable, right? They complain about having to clean out the garage, those sort of things, right? They're going to hang around the vole. What's interesting about these two species of voles is their oxytocin levels, right? So the monogamous voles have actually pretty high levels of oxytocin. The promiscuous voles have low levels of oxytocin, right? So if now you folks are thinking about this a little bit, right? Like, so kind of interested in finding a partner. I wonder if I should check their oxytocin levels to make sure they're going to be, like faithful, right? Because that might be something that's interesting to you. I don't know. Everybody has their own list of characteristics that's important. And if it is, so maybe oxytocin. The problem is, and I just want to warn you for this, if oxytocin levels get too high, sex drive goes down. So you want to kind of make sure you find wherever that kind of happy medium is. Don't you want to have like looking for people with the highest sort of oxytocin levels coming out to the house.
So if you have like no oxytocin at all, you're just like super ready, you just always check something.
Not necessarily, because there are other things going on as well, right? So I wouldn't say oxytocin, the absence necessarily makes you more likely to have sex, but too much of it would drop your drive. Does that make sense? Because males and females, we'll talk about this a little bit, it's really testosterone that controls that drive. Does that make sense? Other questions? Probably nobody has questions about this, right? I've answered questions you didn't even know you had. Perfect. We haven't even talked about gorilla testicles yet. Let's wait for that. It's an exciting one, actually. All right, so reproductive cycles. So, hey, the menstrual cycle I think most of you know what that is. How many of you know what the estrous cycle is? That's basically the menstrual cycle in something that's not a human. It's basically the same thing, right? So if we wanted to talk about a rat, we'd never say a rat has a menstrual cycle. We would say it has an estrous cycle. Why? Well, just to give something a different name, right? It doesn't make any sense, but that's what you do. We just call stuff in people different names because we think we're special, but you've got the same parts as everything else, right? Now, what you might see is if you were to measure hormone level changes in a human versus hormone level changes in a rat through this cycle, they're slightly different, right? So they're not going to be identical, but they're going to be pretty similar, right? So you're going to have those sort of normal changes. Questions about that? Casey, should I tell them why humans hide their menstrual cycle?
Sure.
All right. So, I don't know. See, this is always one of those times where I just want to go like, hey, how many of you can tell who's on their menstrual cycle? And see, nobody's going to raise it. Nobody's going to raise it. Nobody's going to raise it. You'll never know, right? I mean, you'll never know. There's really a couple ways to find out. The polite way, which is always asking in public. And then there's also, you can like check the trash can, right? So that's like, that's the safe way. Right, just look in the trash can. Yep. I'm gonna work over this one. Menstrual cycles, right? There are some species. So when I say menstrual cycle, you're thinking about like this like few-day period of it where it's not so pleasant, right? But it's really the entire 28-day rotation in your hormones, right? And so for our purposes, sort of the important few days are the days when that egg is like right down there and ready to receive some sperm, right? Ready to be fertilized, okay? So those are the days you gotta watch out for. The other days don't really matter. You can do whatever you want those other days and you're perfectly fine. It's those like 3 or 4 days where that egg's there when, depending on what you do, you might be stuck with some lifelong consequences, right? So keep an eye on those 3 or 4 days. A lot of species, though, have this really interesting thing where they'll turn their genitals bright red when they're fertile, right? So that's exciting. And so it's kind of like this big light up sign like, hey, I could probably have some offspring right now. I'm going to, meet me behind this tree for a few minutes and see what happens, right? And a lot of other primates even do this, right? A lot of primates, chimpanzees, for example, their hind parts will turn bright red when the females are fertile and they've got those eggs ready. We don't do that in humans so much, right? And I guess to check if you want. I could get a secure camera, like a secure folder on my phone camera if I was going to do this, right? And you want to check like color values across a number of days, right? So you might want to take like before and after pictures. I don't know. But what I would recommend is, again, hiding your menstrual cycle, right? Because as a species that requires, we've talked about this, babies are useless. Right? They're really useless. They're like even beyond, like there are things that are useless, and then there are things that actually require input to even keep them alive, right? That's even worse than useless, okay? And babies are in that category. They require a lot of work, right? A lot of effort. Okay? Human babies, they can't walk, they can't talk. I mean, most of you can't support yourselves until you're 30, 35 years old. So, I mean, it's really a challenge. So what is a great thing to have if you have a baby? It's like someone to hang around and help you, right? Okay, so that's phenomenal. And what's a great way to keep somebody around to help you with like an offspring? It's like maybe giving them the chance to make another offspring, right? It's like as a species on average, right? Not everybody. On average, we like to think that like making a half copy of ourselves is the coolest thing ever, right? And so like basically you're a half copy of either of your parents, right? So like making an offspring seems to be like a great thing to do. And so if you were able to like keep someone around for an extended period of time, like just like randomly giving them these opportunities when they might be able to create an offspring sounds phenomenal. But if you were able to actually hide when you were actually fertile, right? So they wouldn't know, then they wouldn't be able to like leave for 20 days. And then like just show back up to those like 3 or 4 important days, and then like disappear, right? So it's a great way to keep someone around, like through the entire month, and not just for like 1 week of that. Great job, playing the menstrual cycles. Nobody thinks that's a fascinating story, but it is. Things you don't even think about, right? Like why is our society structured like it is? It's because men aren't that much bigger than women, and women hide their menstrual cycles. And that explains pretty much every social construct in life, right there. Next time you're out and you're like, why do we have red lights? It's probably got something to do with that. All right. Questions about it? Again, no one's going to have any questions like the whole bit. Mary?
Why do you think it's so taboo to talk about yourself? What does that matter? Like, people are just like so icked out by
Yeah,
it. It's
so-
reasonable, but
Yeah, well,
I see a tampon, people are like, oh my god. It's like,
this is like a weird thing. Surprisingly, I've thought about this a lot. And I started thinking like, so, I mean, if you're thinking about the human body, right? And you start to think about where things are located, okay? And some of the most exciting parts of your body are next to some of the most, like, disgusting parts, right? Because, like, you've got this exit ramp where, like, human waste comes out, right? And there's a reason human waste smells, it's because you shouldn't eat it, right? And it's gross. And we'll talk about gross stuff later. There's like infection and stuff in there, right? There's like stuff you're getting rid of. It's a bad idea. But like it's so close to like other parts of your body that are like so thrilling, right? You think, like, why did you put the two of those together, right? It doesn't make sense. But there's like this idea about like, you know, like tubes and flushing, and there's probably like some things, right? So I'm thinking about that. But then I'm thinking about like, what if you don't know, right? And you know, like stuff that comes out of one hole you should avoid. And so probably just to be safe, avoid stuff that comes out of both holes, right? And I think that's why people are doing that. Yeah. And a lot of bodily fluids do carry the possibility of infection, right? And so we'll talk about this later. We'll talk about, we've got some slides in a week or two where we talk about like things that are gross, right? And things that are yellow are gross, but things that are blue are not, right? Because yellow is a body fluid color and blue isn't, right? And so if you see like a blob of blue goo, you're like, oh, whatever. But if you see a blob of like yellow or green goo, you're kind of, and I think it's the same. I don't know. Whatever.
I mean, there's also this thing you have things that are of you but not, that are not you.
Yeah. Yeah, which explains why I have this like fear of hair that's like detached. Like if hair's attached to someone, it's perfectly fine. But like if there was a big hair on this desk, I'd probably stand over there and get somebody to change the slides. I just don't know. Does that seem accurate? Yeah, menstrual cycles, right? They're interesting. Yeah, don't worry about this. I mean, this is just like the basics, right, of that sort of menstrual cycle. I don't think, we're going to think a whole lot about that, although we do want to think about one thing. We want to think about sort of, and we'll talk a bit more in a few moments about this, but we want to think about, during the menstrual cycle, what's the likelihood that a female is going to initiate a sexual encounter, right? Okay. Because that's an impact on your behavior. And there was some work a number of years ago. They were looking at females and they were asking them, okay, like over the course of the next few months, just like write down in your journal every time that you decide you want to have sex with your partner, right? Not when your partner initiates sex with you, right? So that's what was sort of interesting about that particular study is they found that during that fertile period, right, when that egg was available, these women were more likely to initiate sex with their partners. Now that makes some sense, right? On the first pass, you're like, oh, yeah, of course, right? If the whole point of this is like to make other copies of people, then having sex while you're actually fertile makes a whole lot of sense, right? Really, there were a couple problems with that particular study. One, they were only asking females who were in committed long-term monogamous relationships, right? And so they felt very secure, right? And so that makes a difference. What they found is when they sort of expanded the study, another group did the study a few years ago, a few years after that, they asked single women, right, about initiating sex during their menstrual cycle. And what they found is there was actually a decrease in the number of times they initiated sex during the fertile period. of their menstrual cycle, which makes a whole lot of sense too, right? If you think about that, because you're like, well, I don't know, that guy was pretty great for like, the hour we were hanging out at the club, but I just don't know, what's he going to do 6 weeks from now, let alone like 2 years when his kid's like, need car insurance and college tuition. Different considerations. So, whether or not the hormones are actually sort of important there, yeah, maybe, but there's like reproductive behavior is a complex thing, right? In the context of other matters, I think that's important. So there you go. Things you don't think about. Now, how many of you are thinking like, starting to think about like exactly what do I think about my partner, or what does my partner think about me, right? And you're sort of like looking in the trash can, like some of you already like know what's happening in your life, so you have to check this. And you're thinking like, do I really think that's like a guy who's committed to me? So now I'm going to figure out like how many times I initiate sex with him, like, and whether or not that's my fertile period or not, right? And like really, assess my relationship. That's how I would do like marriage counseling. How many times you had sex in the next month, or wanted to have sex, and we'll see if that matches up with your fertile period. If it does, you guys are on good footing. If not, then look elsewhere. Well, no. Casey, is that what you guys do marriage counseling up in the clinic?
We do marriage counseling.
Really? Is that what you tell people?
What?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I just had a brilliant solution to marriage counseling.
Oh gosh, what is it?
Well, so, like women in committed relationships are more likely to initiate sex during the fertile period, right? So if you just ask couples like how often each partner initiates sex and match that up to the menstrual cycle, they'll figure out whether or not the female's really committed and thinks that the male's worthwhile. Right? You're not going to work.
I'm not going to do that.
See, it's having problems I could solve if people listen to me. Everybody would be marrying like 1.25 females, right? Because, we would let you marry however many females you wanted, depending on how big you were compared to the female, right? So that would be your marriage license application. Like what's your height and body weight, we'll calculate BMI, and then do a ratio to the female's BMI. See if you're willing to take on a quarter of another person. It's really changed society, right? Revolutionary. Nobody thinks so. All right, so that's a little bit about females. What about males? Refractory period, again, this is basically the same concept as that sodium channel refractory period, right? The sodium channel's like, woohoo, awesome, and then they close and like, yeah, we're not doing anything for a while. You have to give us a break. It's kind of the same thing here, right? So there's a refractory period for males, right? So, let me go get a sandwich and a glass of orange juice or something and come back a few minutes later. It's good to go. Oxytocin, we already talked about oxytocin, right? It does cause contraction of smooth muscle, right? Which is for males in that ejaculatory system, not in the milk ducts and uterus. And it does play a role in pair bonding in males as well. Oh, so this is some things. I think you guys probably have a handle on those 4 points of sexual behavior, right? This is in rodents, right? So don't take this as a manual for the rest of your life, because it's kind of a basic rundown there. But how many of you have heard of the Coolidge effect? This is sort of an interesting story. How many of you have heard of Calvin Coolidge? How many of you thought a president was going to have, if any president was going to have like a sexual phenomenon named after them, did you think it was going to be Calvin Coolidge? Not at all, right? Growing up in the 90s, I'd always assumed Bill Clinton would be the guy who would get something named after him, but apparently that's not made the text. So, the Coolidge effect. Apparently, there's this story, probably not true, but it's a fun story anyway. So you can get a little bit of presidential history here. While you're president, you get to visit farms. I don't know if that's going to change whether or not you want to be president of the United States, but apparently you get to visit farms. Calvin Coolidge and his wife went to go visit a farm. I don't know if you guys know how roosters and hens work, but you get one rooster and you get a whole bunch of hens, right? Okay, I can tell you a fun rooster and hen story tomorrow. This is kind of a fun one too, but I got a second one as well. So, roosters and hens, right? You get one rooster and a bunch of hens, and that one rooster takes care of all those hens, right? The hens don't need another rooster, and the rooster's got like 8 or 10 hens, fine. And so apparently, Mrs. Coolidge was sort of a little disappointed. Her name was Mrs. I don't know what was a little disappointed with President Coolidge, and she asked the farmer, like, hey, So we only one rooster, and one rooster's like, got everything it needs to take care of those like 10 hens, and he's like, oh yeah, absolutely, right? And she was like, okay, well maybe like let me know that, right? I think that's something that message needs to receive, right? Which is not really the message you want to hear from someone. And then Calvin Phillips decided to be president. He could be real witty. He said, yeah, but they're all like different hens, right? And the farmer said, yeah, of course. He said, well, maybe we should let Mrs. Coolidge know that. And so the Coolidge effect is sort of a way to bypass the refractory period by introducing a new sexual partner for the male. So there you go. There was a study a number of years ago with sheep. Why they did sheep, I don't know. And after I tell you this story, you'll think, well, I'd like to repeat that study. Pick a smaller animal. So they got these sheep, and they got a ram, which is like a male sheep, right? They had some ewes. That's EWE, that's a female sheep. And they would bring in the female sheep, right? And the ram, and they do their business. And then they would bring in a second female sheep, and the ram would be ready to roll, right? And have a good time. If they would bring back in a previous sheep, right? The ram would kind of go like, hey, I'm going to go get some Doritos. Guys, we'll see what happens later. Like, I already know what's going on there. No need to try again, right? So this particular ram was able to differentiate, okay, I've already had sex with this particular ewe, I don't need to do that again. They bring in a different ewe, it's like, oh man, it's exciting, somebody new, we'll give that a try. They did this 12 times. They brought in 12 new ewes to this ram, and the ram didn't stop. What happened is the researchers got tired because they had to keep shoveling in like 12 full-grown sheep, right? You can imagine. Well, I think like smaller animals, right? Like the cats or something. Chuck those over there, like the 12 cats. But moving around 12 sheep takes some time. So, that's pretty interesting, right? Then they thought, oh, how in the world does this ram even know, right? Because they're not wearing like name badges. How in the world does this ram know, like all these sheep look the same to us, right? How does it know it's a different sheep each time, right? So they thought, well, okay, we'll be creative. And I think this is like the first instance of like sheep roleplay. They put a mask and a trench coat on one of the sheep that had already been ram and brought it back. True story. They brought it back in and tried to get the ram to have sex with this sheep wearing a mask and a trench coat. And it was like, no, look, I know you guys are trying to fool me here. I know I've already had sex with that sheep. I don't need these pegs. Brandon, this is a true story. I wish it wasn't. I mean, I really wish it wasn't. I wish I was just like making this up for an example. True story. Long story short, I guess, on this is it's pheromones. We'll talk about pheromones later. The sheep was like, yeah, I know what that sheep smells like, so no need to try that again. So there you go. Sheep and trench coats. One of my favorites. Hey, if you guys ever start like a comedy troupe or a band, you should call it Sheep and Trench Coats. Okay? So many great things here. So that's the Coolidge effect, and then a little bonus story. In females, and again, I want to be clear, this is in rodents, right? Because if this was like in a different species like humans, you might think, no, it's something there. So they go through something called mordosis, right? This is a way that a rodent will signal, a female rodent will signal to a male rodent, all right, I'm fertile, I'm ready to roll, let's try something. The first thing they do is they kind of raise their hindquarters, right? Get the tail up and out of the way, makes perfect sense, right? So far, this is very practical, right? So you can have access to what you need back there. They'll arch their back, sort of a weird thing. And then finally what they'll do is they'll start wiggling their ears. Apparently, I know, right? If a guinea pig starts wiggling the ears, that just drives the male guinea pigs crazy. And you get that, you get like the tail kind of up and out. It's done again. That's the quickest way to signify you're ready to roll. So, if you guys are not doing so well attracting partners, maybe try arching your back and wiggling your ears. I don't know if that's going to be an effective strategy. I always mention that just to see who will try it. But so far, and maybe, if you already have a partner, go home and give it a try. It's a safe environment, right? And just see if that's something that gets going. I don't think it will be. If it does, I mean, you've walked onto something new. Just some variety. So, we talked about males, we talked about females. What else? Got more slides. Oh, don't worry about this. Talk about that. We ready to talk about androgens? We need to talk about a couple of things. Because we've not talked about, well, I guess we can talk about this. So you can see. All right, so we should talk about a couple other, we should think about just a couple other things on this slide. We should think about the role of testosterone. No, we'll talk about that later. But we should talk about gorillas. How many of you love gorillas? Yeah, I got one here. Chimpanzees. Okay, we have humans. Hey, you guys know humans, right? And then there's like another species called bonobos. You guys are familiar with bonobos? Yeah, they're pretty awesome, right? They're different. And we'll talk about bonobos briefly and then talk about these other guys. So bonobos were originally classified as pygmy chimpanzees, and then people realized, well, that's completely wrong. Not only do they look different, or different sizes, they behave completely differently than bonobos or than chimpanzees, and they have sort of a different sort of genetic structure. Right? So the DNA is different. Bonobos are kind of interesting. They are very sexual, right? And so I always like to say bonobos are always willing to have sex with another bonobo. The problem is there's like a third bonobo that gets in the way, and while they're on their way to have sex with a bonobo across the field, they got to stop because two bonobos that are in the middle of the field and pay their respects, right? As they're moving through. Most bonobo sexual encounters are very brief. You can imagine if you're trying to have sex with like 50 different people in a given day, you don't have a lot of time to devote to each individual person, right? So you just kind of like hit and run. Is that the right phrase here? No, I guess but you get the idea, right? You don't need to swap insurance info. It's like, nice meeting you. What was your name again? All right, I'll forget it by the next bonobo. If you think about this for a moment, the bonobos and chimpanzees are sort of similar, right? If you start to think about like, well, that's pretty awesome, right? So now we're going to think about some other sort of physical constraint that influences our social structure, right? So bonobos and chimpanzees are quite similar, right? Chimpanzees are perfectly willing to have sex with a bunch of other chimpanzees, right? They kind of run around and do business. Again, they have rather short sexual encounters, but they have a high number of them. Chimpanzees are a little more aggressive than bonobos. Bonobos tend to be a little more peaceful. They're actually vegetarians, right? So we call vegetarian diet those chimpanzees. What's interesting about chimpanzees and bonobos is they actually have the largest testicles of any primate, right? So I mean, you wouldn't expect that, right? But they have these giant testicles, right? So that's kind of interesting. And again, they have sex like all the time, which makes a lot of sense, right? If you're trying to have sex multiple times, you should, have something ready for each of those encounters, right? If you're using a larger factory to make that sort of production line work, makes a lot of sense, right? If you think about gorillas, surprisingly, gorillas have the smallest testicles of any of the primates, or any of the great apes, I should say, right? Which are the beasts, chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, orangutans, gorillas don't have sex all that often. They have multiple sort of females in their harems. They may only have sex once every few months, right? And so they'll kind of do that. Humans are somewhere in between in terms of testicle size, right? And I think most humans shoot for some sort of sexual activity in between, right? The gorilla and the chimpanzee or bonobo frequency and duration, right? So the factor something. So if you were to rank order those in terms of testicle sizing, you just have to think about their sexual behavior as well. It sort of maps. It's kind of interesting. Or you're going to call your grandparents talk about gorilla testicles. Hey, guess what, Grandma? Gorillas have the smallest.
It's like I think we're
Awesome. You ready for it? Go pictures. It's such interesting artwork, right? So there you go. Sort of another interesting side story. This is like of the great apes, humans have the largest penises. I don't know if that's interesting to anyone, right? One of the theories behind that was like, well, it's because of all the acrobatic sex people are having. They need a bigger penis. Well, I guess that's a reasonable hypothesis, right? The problem with that is orangutans, right? They actually have sex while they're hanging in trees for 14 hours. Yeah, I know, right? That's pretty acrobatic, if you ask me. Hanging in a tree for 14 hours, let alone having somebody else in that tree with you. I mean, it's just, Seems like a lot of effort, right? To get the same end result, you can just kind of relax, take it easy, and not risk like breaking an arm. So that was probably out the window. The sort of interesting idea behind what really is the point there. It's probably like some kind of signal, right? So it's like back before pants. I don't know if you guys remember that time. It was a time before pants, right? And probably like being able to see someone else's penis was like a signal, like, oh, there's a penis over there. I probably shouldn't go. I'll just stay over in my territory. There's some actually modern day. I know it's actually whatever. There's some modern day evidence to support this, right? There's actually a magazine. I don't remember the title of the magazine. It was sort of a, I don't know, what's the correct phrase for like an artsy pornographic magazine? Let's imagine it was one of those, right? I guess from those times. No idea what you're talking about. This was like a magazine that featured nude individuals, but not necessarily sexualized. It was designed to sell to males. And so it kind of featured female bodies, but males were there as well. And you get comic balance and things like a prop once in a long item. They decided, well, if we're selling to males, on average, we should probably just like not include the pictures of the naked dudes, right? And we'll probably sell more copies of this magazine. In fact, what was interesting is their sales went down for males and actually went up for females, which was sort of interesting. And that was amongst heterosexual individuals, right? So I think there's some caveats to that story. But so there you go. Look for those signals. Nobody thinks that. Why don't you guys think about these things? Casey, why don't people think about sex more?
It's pretty natural and normal to live it.
I know they should, right? That's what I'm trying to tell them. But like all the people who didn't show up, they missed all these great stories, all this great information. All right. So let's think a little bit about organizational effects now. Right? We've talked a little bit about activate, or we haven't really talked about activation. We'll talk about those in a moment. So far we've talked about things that are not your brain, right? But we should spend a little time talking about your brain, since that guy sort of controls behavior that you do stuff, right? What's really interesting, if you take a rodent and you don't expose them to any androgens, they'll actually exhibit female sexual behavior, right? We talked about that lordosis business, right? So they'll kind of perform those activities. Okay? If you expose that rodent to androgens, they will no longer try to do female sexual behavior, and in fact, they'll actually try to engage in male sexual behavior. And I should have mentioned that these are female organs. It's kind of fascinating, right? So, what you can do is you can take, and we'll talk more about this in a couple of weeks, but you have female rodents who are exposed to testosterone, right? That's going to make them less likely, if they're exposed to more testosterone, they'll be less likely to attempt female sexual behavior. They'll actually attempt male sexual behavior, right? And you kind of do this test artificially. Okay. So what you would do is right after birth, let's say you would give, you would give that particular animal testosterone, right? And then you could give them testosterone later, you could give them estrogen, progesterone later, right, or estradiol, progesterone later, or different sorts of situations. But if you take a female rodent, and you expose that female rodent to testosterone, who remembers that phrase, prenatal androgenization? Right? If you expose them to testosterone prenatally, expose them to testosterone later, they're actually going to be more likely to attempt to actually try to mount other females like a male would, right? So they'll attempt male sexual behavior on female rodents when they're presented to them. They have fewer offspring, and they seem to be less interested in mating with males. It's kind of a fascinating thing, like how much you can affect behavior just by like switching up hormones, right? You don't think about this. Some of this is going to be early brain development. Some of it's going to be some activational effects we'll talk about later. But setting up this early brain organization and getting that ready for those hormones later. And in fact, some of this seems to be true of humans as well. Obviously, there aren't a lot of folks like, I'm getting ready to have a baby, you just like pump it full of testosterone, let's see what happens to it. Not a lot of folks signing up for that, right? So what are the ways that we might find a human female that would be exposed to more testosterone than the average? There's sort of two ways you can do this, right? One are twins, when there's a male fetus in there as well, right? So if we're thinking about fraternal twins, there's a male and a female. Those females tend to be a little more aggressive, and they seem to have a higher likelihood of identifying as homosexual than you would find in the average population. There's a second group of individuals that are females that have something called congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Basically, this means from birth, your adrenal glands shoot out a bunch of hormones. Okay? Which is going to increase your testosterone. If you're a male and you have something like this, it doesn't really make a difference, right? Your testosterone levels are already pretty high, relatively speaking. Not really going to be a problem. Not going to change your behavior. Not really going to change any sort of developmental issues. Or of course. But if you're a female and you have this particular issue, you're also going to be slightly more aggressive on average. Males are always going to be more aggressive than females because testosterone, we talked about that in a few weeks. But you're also going to be, if you're a female and you fall into that category, again, slightly more likely to identify as homosexual than the average population. All right, so here's the graph we already talked about with, again, this is in committed heterosexual couples where females were more likely to initiate sex during their ovulatory period. If these were not in couples, right, or not people as committed, what you can see with females is a dip here, right? So we're going to talk about that, not a big deal. Oh, this is sort of interesting. Actually, sort of two interesting stories here. Here's sort of a baseline testosterone level for females, pretty low, right? It's kind of down around 0, or at least it's going to be 0 forever. It's just a change in testosterone levels. I don't know if you've ever been in a long distance relationship. Don't have to raise your hands, please don't, because the next phase of the story might not want everybody to know about. But if you've ever been in a long distance relationship or you've ever been away from your partner for some extended period of time, just think silently about what's the first thing you do when you get back together, right? It's probably going to be some sort of sexual activity if your relationship is at that point, right? And so what you would anticipate is sort of an increase in testosterone, right? Testosterone even in females seems to be a driving factor for sexual drive, right? And so what you see is in these individuals who are participating in this study, the day before they visited their partner after this time they were on this long-term, sort of long-distance relationship, it's like a 30% increase in testosterone levels, right? Which is a pretty significant jump, right, from baseline to 30%. So you're anticipating that activity, you know what's going to happen, and you're anticipating that sexual activity, so your testosterone levels are going to sort of raise to mass right now. And they kind of drop back down. It's an interesting study a few years ago by someone who did not want their name attached to the study. It made perfect sense to you why in a few moments. This was a guy who was out kind of on a remote research island, and he was kind of hanging out there for a while. And then he would come back in periodically to sort of the mainland, right? So I don't know if any of you've ever been like stuck on a deserted island for an extended period of time, right? There's like certain things that might be on the top of your list when you get back into the city, right? And one of the things that was on the top of this guy's list was females, right? So he was really interested in that. What he would do, being a scientist, he shaved and he would measure the weight of his beard clippings, right? I know, right? Like, would somebody do this? It's like a weird thing to do. Like, it's how bored I guess tired of watching these penguins. I'm going to shave my beard. I don't know. So he would measure his beard clippings every day, and what he would notice is as he got closer, like when he got close to like when he was going to head back in like civilization, his beard would grow faster. And so his beard clippings would weigh more because testosterone levels would be higher, his beard would grow faster. He was anticipating some sexual activity. But I don't know, I find that fascinating, right? Yes, you can do these tests at home, right? Like schedule something on the calendar, talk to your intimate partner, and go, all right, well, on this day, I guess I should have drawn a chart. Better on this day, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start like, I'm going to draw a beard, like every other day. I'm going to shave and measure my beard, see what happens. Do that test. Anybody interested in that? I'd like to know the results. See if you can replicate that. I feel like some people would start that, and then they would go, man, that's about as far as I'm going. Like, well, we'll start over next week. I guess. I don't know. So there you go. These are important things, right? How many of you have ever wanted to grow a beard, like really fast? Yeah, right? And you think, well, like the best way to do that is to sort of like fake plan some sex, so your beard will grow back, like you're anticipating that. Nobody thinks about it. Like, how many of you are in the theater, right? Like, what if you needed to grow a real beard because of an acting role? Right way to do it. That could be an acting coach. Just imagine you have a girlfriend and imagine she's going to have sex with you 3 weeks from now and your beard will start growing.
Why? You're like half-time the girl 40. She's going to be here on the first.
Wow, that's even better. We could actually start a business together. that was brilliant. What? I think it's only prostitution if you exchange minds. Your clippings is fine. You see your clippings on the science. I think. This is not the place to have a conversation about like jewelry versus money.
I never want to pay you in beard clippings.
Keep that in mind. Well, we'll put that sign up. We do not accept beard clippings. Cash on that. Anybody study accounting? I feel like we're going to need like a shifty accountant for this business. You know someone? Great. Oh, then you might know somebody who studies business.
Yeah.
Really? All right. Hey, what about pheromones? How many of you have ever heard of these guys? How many of you have ever wasted your money on pheromones? Don't worry. I really thought Amy was going up, but that was just a ponytail adjustment. Don't you like, oh yeah, I wasted money on pheromones.
Yeah.
You wasted, you don't have.
Seriously.
They're a total waste of money.
I bought some for my cat.
Oh, okay. That might not be as big of a waste of money. For a time of year, it has to have kittens. Yeah. My sister-in-law gives her cat CBD oil. Her vet said, that's from the vet. He said, your cat's a little crazy, we can give it Prozac and try CBD oil. Your side effects, I just don't know. It's like, this little drop of CBD oil under its tongue every day. It's a happy cat. I mean, it is now. So, pheromones. Okay, so maybe that wasn't as much of a waste as I think. There are folks who will buy pheromones and like spray them on their bodies, right? And they try to attract people. Part of the problem with that is pheromones are processed through this thing called the bone nasal organ. Okay, you've got one, but it's not connected to anything. So, I don't know what it's doing. It's just kind of hanging out there. Now, if you're a rat, you've definitely got a pretty good bone nasal organ, right? It's connected to a bunch of stuff. So rats are really like pheromone driven. Then there are cool things you can do with pheromones. Humans can process pheromones some. There's like some conflicting evidence on this. Probably not as good as like that sheep in the trench coat business. Sorry, we're not quite that good. But a lot of this is going through the olfactory bulb. How many of you guys have ever seen those studies where they'll like have some guy wear a t-shirt for 4 days and just put it in a Ziploc bag? I do this all the time at home. I wear t-shirts for 4 days, put them in a Ziploc bag, and hide in places where my wife will open it. So like I know it's going to smell great. It's going to be real pleasant. Just think about that, like cracking open this, I don't know. But they, and they'll have women like rate the attractiveness of how the shirt smells, right? And then they'll often show you pictures of the guys and have you rate how attractive the picture. Quite often these things match up, which is kind of weird, right? So you might smell a shirt and figure out how attractive someone. I don't know. So if you ever see someone at the mall just like, sniffing people, it's called a security guard, because that's weird. But in other species, we seem to love it. So there you go. That's pheromones. Oh, and some pheromones can be tasted, right? So also watch out for those people who try to live. It's weird. One more thing when we talk about that. There are some examples. I'm not going to answer any sort of specifics here, but you can read about these. Some of these are kind of cool, and they all involve urine. So that's exciting. How many of you have ever been sitting around going, boy, I wish I could like start puberty now? You can just roll around in male urine, and it'll get a kick started. Right? They'll do this with mice. If they keep mice away from male urine, and then they expose them to urine, then male urine, and they'll kind of jump into puberty. They'll also like, kind of kickstart their estrous cycle as well. So kind of do that. If you have decided, like, well, you know what, I really love to just not have an estrous cycle anymore, you can completely remove yourself from the pheromones in male urine. They typically use urine because it's pretty well packed, at least in rodents, with those pheromones. It's easy to collect, right? Just get like a little ladle and catch it in a mouse piece. Use a funnel, put it in a spray bottle. I think that's how it works, actually. I'm sure there's like some way to catch it. But anyway, those are some examples of pheromones and their effects on your development. Questions about that? Humans, it's kind of hard to figure out if this works, right?
I feel like we should be more about compatibility of MHC.
What? That's when the tadpoles eat each other. You know about tadpoles eating each other? So there's like a species of frog that's cannibalistic when they're tadpoles, and they'll, it's actually kind of confusing. It's sort of the opposite story of this, but they'll put other tadpoles in their mouth, like a bigger tadpole, right? They develop a little bit of new tadpoles come along. They'll like put the tadpole in their mouth and like switch it around a little bit, like it's like a cousin, and they'll spit it out if they're related. If they're not related, they will swallow. It's pretty crazy, right? You should check this out. Don't worry about MHC because you're never going to know, right? I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to ask, like, if you went and smelled your fiance's armpit to see if your MHC is looking at it. Did you do that? No. You made some other decision, right?
You know, marriage really bad.
Yeah, people are complex, right? I mean, if we were just like rodents and we just went around and smelled each other like no, not going to work. Let's just move on. But how many times have you been like 2 years into something and you're like, man, if I just smelled her armpit, it has saved me so much time and heart trouble. Really, have anybody been in one of those situations? You don't have to raise your hands. You know you have. Just don't think about this. No, nobody thinks. How many of you are right now in a relationship thinking, I'm going to have to go home and smell some shirts? Have to check. That's what we should do. We should start a business. MHC compatibility test. I think it would work, right? That's the best thing you can do for matchmaking. Just like open up and swab your cheek. You might ask some questions. Or we can going to create offspring that have the most awesome MHC possible. That's what's important. Those of you that aren't familiar with MHC, don't worry about it. It's the stuff on the outside of your cell. And you don't want somebody with too similar of an MHC, partly because you're probably related to them, and partly because your offspring aren't going to have great resistance to a lot of the things that are coming out. That's a short story, right?
Yeah, unless you're pregnant and then
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I wasn't worried about it. So, questions about male mouse urine? No. I think about someone like I don't know, what if you're like, oh, boy, I really wish I was in puberty, just run into like a truck stop bathroom. Try to start reading. No, nobody thinks that. I also think about boarding schools, right? Or maybe you send your kid off to boarding school when they're like 6. Is that how boarding schools work? They still have those? See, that's why I've not had kids yet. I'm not sure about the boarding school thing. We can figure that out. Right? And then I tell my wife I don't want to have kids until we make enough money to send them off to school.
I actually went to a boarding school.
You went to a boarding school?
Yeah.
Yeah, how was that?
Actually,
Yeah, see, there you go, right?
it was all boys.
Oh,
Did you get there and like peeing on each other or you weren't either?
he's got his own urine, he started his own puberty. Didn't have to worry about it. If it was all girls, then you have other sort of considerations, right? So you hire like female staff completely, right? But then here's like a problem, like most females are exposed to a male one way or the other, right? Because, I mean, most females have like a father, right? So your dad's probably urinating at your house. So you're going to be exposed to super animals in place. See, nobody think, how many of you have thought about your father's urinating? It's the best class ever. How many of you wish you'd sleep today? So yeah, we people, I know. No, they'll be good. All right, what else do we need to know? The amygdala is kind of interesting. Smells go to the amygdala, we know that. We'll talk more about the amygdala later. In a week or so when we talk about emotion, talk about things that are going in there. Okay? So. Oh, and there's the specific things we were talking about. No, there you go. Bruce effect, don't have to worry about that as a human. It's kind of interesting. It's where if you bring a kind of like put in a new male in an environment or a new male urine, the female will sort of spontaneously abort the offspring that they're developing. Right? You know, they'll kind of take over. The reason for that is, and there's actually a much more gruesome sort of extension to this, especially like in gorillas, they come in and kill all the babies they can. Like I know, right? Here we got Jacob over here loves gorillas. They're just all the time doing infanticide. That's okay. I'm not worried about it. So if a gorilla takes over another territory, kill all of the infants, right? Especially the nursing infants. There's like one thing that a nursing mother can do. It's like get started on that estrous cycle, right? And I mean, if you're just taking over somebody gorilla's territory, the first thing you want to do is impregnate all their females, right? And what was the only other reason you were taking over that territory was for food. I mean, food's just going to be there, right? But you got to get started on the females pretty soon, especially because of small testicles. You're only going to have sex like once every month, right? It's going to take a while. So you got to kill the babies first, right? Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, why would you want to invest your resources in somebody else's kid? Doesn't make any sense. I'm going to just like destroy step families. Some of you guys are like really taking a moment, right? That's okay. Casey, are you okay back there?
Yeah, doing great.
Doing great. Doing great. There's actually a ton of evidence from like the animal kingdom that like step families show better. I mean, it's bad enough to make their functions, but there's somebody else. They should have smelled their armpits first. They might have stayed together. See, marriage counseling, right there. Put a placard on my door.
There. It right the first time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, how many of you are now going to change your strategies picking apart? Nobody's going to race. You should think about it, though, right? You're going to wake up in the middle of the night and go, like, look over. Smell. Don't worry about smiling.
Will you take a moment to see that there is an ejaculation generator on the
Yeah. I mean, this is all like spinal mechanism stuff. I mean, it's not a whole lot to it. It's like you turn it on and there it goes. And that's really sort of the end of the story. It's a short story. There you go. Casey, you have any other comments? Anything else you wanted to add here?
It's all you.
Brain mechanisms. I did want to talk about this a little bit, though, right? So, in males, there's an area called the medial preoperative area, right? This is actually pretty important for male sexual behavior. So, if you manage to damage and turn this off, male sexual behavior sort of stops. There's also something called the sexually dimorphic nucleus, right? It's larger in males. It's also important for male sexual behavior. Neither of these particular brain regions play much of a role in female sexual behavior. For the most part, they live pretty much forecasts. And don't worry about these. That's all sexual behavior. We talked about that. Females, right? In females, we want to think about something called the ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus. This particular brain region is going to play a central role in female sexual behavior. So it makes perfect sense the behaviors are different, right, for males and females. So different brain regions should control those behaviors. This is like a whole big, interesting, a bunch of stuff, whatever. Really only about 5% of mammals form like monogamous, long-lasting heterosexual couples, right? That's pretty rare, 5%. And that's probably even, like who knows, right? It's some of these things in humans, it's always sort of hard to judge and do this without any sort of bias, right? Like culture to culture, try to figure out the averages and so forth. I don't know, sort of fascinating stuff. Basically, I read some study once that maybe like 25% of people, their like father is not really their father. Like seriously, maybe I is 25%. I don't know if anybody's ever thought about that. I mean, some people have thought about it, but like, geez, not either of those people. And the other thing is like mothers, right? Have you ever done maternity tests? Because like how many times, like have you ever seen a baby? I've seen a number of babies, right? At YouTube channel. You just type in babies on TV or whatever. You see them. Look at the skin. The fat, the little fuzzy eyes, no hair, right? I told you my sister just had a baby, right? You could put that baby next to other babies. You could put that baby next to like a banana. I wouldn't know the difference. I was like, I don't know. I mean, they're just like lumps of flesh, nothing there, right? So how many times do you think somebody's gone, Smith or Johnson? I don't know which card must be here. You don't know which baby you're taking home. Now people are getting, I see some worried faces up there. Right? You realize, I'm going to have to do a little maternity test. They don't test. They should test all babies when they go home, right? Like, are we giving this to the right mother? Because you don't know. You don't know. You just grab one. You're like, well, looks good enough to me. I was wondering, like, what if you were to ask people, like, shoot the baby out? I just wonder if people could even identify their own child, like, if they didn't see it actually come out of their body. You ever think about this? I'm going to run that study. I'm just going to, shoot the baby out. Let's catch it. Let's go hide it somewhere. Take a picture of it. Show you pictures of that baby and a bunch of other babies that were born some other time, of course, right? And then you can say, which one's yours? I don't think people will be able to tell. I think I picked the biggest. It's like it must have been, it had to been the one with the big head. I know that's the one it was. That's how it felt. I really think that's. Casey, can you get that one by the IRB for me?
Sure. We'll do our best.
Huh?
We'll see if they'll approve it.
It's a good study, isn't
I'll
it?
contact Bruce right now.
Yeah. I think it's a good study. Hey, but chimpanzees can actually identify, you guys be excited about this. Chimpanzees can actually identify like faces, or say facial recognition. So they'll show pictures of faces to chimpanzees. And if it's a chimpanzee the other chimpanzee knows, I know that guy, let's just tap on that picture, right? The other thing it'll do is if you show it like an unknown chimpanzee and like another unknown chimpanzee, but that unknown chimpanzee is a relative of a chimpanzee it does know, it'll pick the one that's the relative. Like they can tell. I know, right? Like I mean, how many of you, like if you were to show me a picture of your parents, I'd be able to go like, of course, assuming you're not in that 25% group, I would be able to go, yeah, like that's definitely your parents. I bet that random person, your brother, right? Because you have some similarities that are the same. You share so much DNA. Right? Chimpanzees. Again, what do you guys think? What do you do with your spare time? Obviously, you don't think about important things. We can talk about that, but I don't know about that. And that's just our complications. what do we want to talk about here? Oh, we already talked about CAH. There's some, actually there's some genetic. There was a genetic study a few years ago by this guy named Dean Hamer. Anybody know Dean Hamer? Man, this guy stays in my water. He did like two sort of massive genetic studies, and both of them got him some like, yeah, that's like actually pretty cool, and then some people were like, well, you know, you're totally wrong because you're an idiot. Kind of stuff. Yeah, you got some real hot water. But I mean, like DNA studies are like pretty straightforward, right? Like, all right, let's see what your DNA is. How many copies of that allele did you get, right? Did you get 0? Did you get 1? Did you get 2? I don't know, whatever. Right? It's not a lot of, you just map it out and go like, well, that's what it is. Mapping that onto behavior is a whole separate story, right? And that's where things become complicated. But Hamer did two things. One of the first things he did, and that's really important to this conversation, is he was like, all right, guys, I have found a genetic correlation with whether or not you identify as homosexual, right? And so he found the gene, and you have, you know, 2 copies of this, you're more likely to identify as reproductive variant, you're more likely to identify as homosexual. If you don't, you can imagine people didn't really enjoy that one very much. This came out like in the 90s, right? And so it wasn't like a terribly popular sort of funding for a while. He was like really sort of some hot water. He did his study with males, so with males exclusively for that study. Then, you know, like maybe 10 years after that, he's like, all right, guys, hey, see, this is the one that got him too. I found the gene that made you believe in God. Yeah, I know, right? I haven't gotten into trouble too. Same people sort of got after him both times. I mean, he really, but he was like, look, you know, I sort of figured it out here. Like, here's the DNA, and here's the, you know, it's got this actually this great book. And how many of you are psych readers? You guys should read this book. It's called The God Gene, and it's about this long. It's a short book, right? And he spends, what's fascinating about Casey is he spends, like in this book, he spends this much of the book operationally defining what it means to be religious, right? Because the DNA, again, it's pretty straightforward. How many copies of this variant did you get, right? You didn't get any, you got 1 or you got 2, right? We tested it. The hard part is like operationally defining in that particular case whether or not somebody's religious. It's kind of fascinating. So I don't know if anybody's interested. It's a fun one. All right. Questions about that? All right. What about parental behavior? All right, this is fascinating. So mammals, which most of you are, right? So whether you're thinking about it, is that true about me or not? Right? You gotta take a moment, right? So mammals sort of do this fascinating thing where they produce food for their offspring, these females of the species do, right? So they kind of take care of their young for an extended period of time. It's not like a, you know, like some other species where you can just like shoot them out and go, right? You're just like, well, I'm done with that. I'm not take care of it. Oh, there's like a ton of stuff coming out constantly, like, oh, maybe crocodiles are actually good mothers, whatever. So if you're a rodent, you're probably going to build a nest. That's pretty awesome. And you're going to like start taking care of your infants, or your offspring, right? That's really kind of fascinating. There's a rat, like carrying this pup around, right? It's really kind of fascinating about this. How many of you have ever put a rat in your mouth, like a rat pup that just came out of yours? No, but you can imagine what that tastes like, right? So everybody just take a moment. Nobody's, see some of you are doing it. The class, you should bring a brown paper sack. So, they taste awful. And rats do the same thing, right? Once the rat shoots the pup out of its uterus, and it starts to clean it off, because it comes out like covered in, like, you know, gone. And it needs cleaned off, right? So you clean it off, it's kind of used, right? You can imagine, like, if I was a rat trying to lick off a rat pup. So it's really kind of fascinating. What's interesting is while they're doing this, while they're taking care of their offspring, there's a brain region called the ventral tegmental area. It gets excited and sends dopamine to the nucleus accumbens. I know, right? Shoots dopamine to the nucleus accumbens. Now, any of you who know anything about like reward and what's on the other side of the coin from reward is addiction, know that that's the brain circuit that has to get activated, right? if you're going to become addicted to a particular substance or behavior. So if you ever take cocaine, I don't recommend it, but if you ever take cocaine, it's going to really jack up the dopamine in your nucleus accumbens, right? So the same thing that's going to happen, like when your mom packs your lunch. So I always like to say your mom doesn't really care about you; she's just addicted to taking care of you. And if you start to think about like some of you guys may be going through this in your lives right now, right? Because you're at that sort of transition phase where you're trying to get away from your family as quickly as you possibly can. And some of them are reaching out with those mother tendrils, right? And, like pulling you back in, and then they start having like convulsions and withdrawal, and it's right. Anybody else's mother do that? I guess my mother hadn't really much. I don't think she did. My mother and I have an interesting relationship. One, thankfully I have other siblings who are going to take care of it. And she told me before they got jobs and things, she was like, if something happens to me, just put me somewhere nice. I know you're not going to take care of it. Second line of that was, if I'm not really at myself, save the money, and still put me somewhere that's nice. So, you didn't have to tell me, but thanks. So there you go, right? Once you get to that point. So, maternal behavior, there you go, right? Hey, another cool thing about rats, they can count. I've already noticed. So if you put like a pile of rat pups in the middle of a cage, and they what these rats will do is they'll like go, like you have two rat mothers, they'll just keep going in circles, like taking each other's rat pups and bringing them back to their own corner. They'll just keep doing that indefinitely because they don't know how many pups grow. It's just ridiculous. So there you go, right? It's a good thing people aren't like that, right? Can you imagine you're pushing a stroller at your park or something, I got like 3 seats in here. It's gonna grab up 3 kids and put them in there. So, we arrest people for that. So, rats, who cares? I did see 2 rats play basketball. They used the ball out of some roll-on deodorant. There was no dribbling. It was all 1890s rules where you were allowed to carry the ball and walk with it. Hey, there it is. No, that's not it. Sorry. Here it is. Mental area for the nucleus accumbens. That's pretty awesome, right? So there you go. Questions, comments, concerns?
So if the mother had been